Well, good afternoon, everyone. I can barely see you because of the lights, but I know you're out there. So my name is Cameron Haight. I'm a field CTO and Vice President at VMware. And this is my colleague, Dev.
I'm Dev Nog. I was the founder and CTO of Wavefront, acquired by VMware, and now I'm a senior director.
So we're going to give you a tag team presentation this afternoon. And we want to talk about operations kind of from a development perspective. And taking the position that we believe that development will be more involved in operations. So our premise overall is that in the era of a cloud-native environment, that dev teams will take more responsibility. So I'm going to walk over here so I can see more of you, a little bit out of the light. So how many of you think in the audience that this is a rather controversial statement? Raise your hand. Are there a few of you? Okay, there's some of you. Ah, large number. Okay, good. Right, well, it's no fun just preaching the conventional wisdom, right? So we're going to set the stage here, the first part of the presentation, trying to set some of the groundwork for why we think this is true. And then my colleague Dev's going to come up and talk about how one of our products is designed to kind of help folks on this area. Now, I must say, this is kind of interesting. This is my first time at Gartner Data Center Conference as a vendor, because I used to be an analyst at Gartner. And one of the areas I covered was APM, Application Performance Monitoring. And so in the APM world, what we saw over the last couple of years was certainly more and more influence of the development teams and the pre-production teams on selection criteria for APM monitoring tools. And increasingly, that was also starting to carry over in terms of actual responsibility as the environment became more and more complex. And of course, I'm sure many of you have heard Dr. Werner Vogel, CTO of Amazon, say, if you build it, you run it. Right? So we are starting to see more of that behavior and activity start to occur. Now, I want to be very clear. Right? How many of you have heard the term no-ops? Raise your hand. Okay, I don't believe in no-ops. Okay? By the way, I kind of find that funny. As an old assembler programmer, I'm going like, really? That's kind of a really strange name. But in any case, I don't believe in no-ops, because at the end of the day, there's going to be operations. And even if it's operations within development, there'll be an operations function. But we see that function kind of morphing into, I think, something more valuable. So again, hold me to that, and we'll see if we convince you of that by the end of today's presentation. So what do we mean by cloud native or cloud data era, right? So we see three key elements that kind of help define the concept of cloud native, at least from the VMware perspective. Right? One is infrastructure. So obviously, containers are a key part of many cloud native environments. Kubernetes as well, from a workload and scheduling capabilities as well. Service meshes, public cloud services, and the like. Now, what I find kind of interesting is we're VMware, and on that definition, you don't see the word virtualization, right? We do support containers. We do support Kubernetes with PKS, which we announced back at VMworld. And we actually believe there's an opportunity to run containers in a virtualized environment. There are reasons why you want to do that. But in terms of just strict cloud native, we think these are some of the key architectural elements from an infrastructure perspective. And of course, tying to that are applications. And of course, probably not news to you, but we view microservices as a key part of that application component of a cloud-native environment. How many of you are doing microservices? Raise your hand. Okay? Okay, keep your hand up for a moment. Those of you do microservices? How easy are those are really easy to monitor and manage, right? Keep your hands up if they are. A few? Okay, I want to talk to you because I'm not sure I believe you, but that's okay. Seriously, microservices also bring an element of both flexibility and agility, but also some manageability and monitoring challenges. We'll talk some more about that, especially in Dev's part of the session today. And then last but certainly not least, processes. Processes are a key part of a cloud-native world. So the key process foundation is the notion of agility, rapid deploy, and of course, DevOps. And in fact, years ago when I was with Gartner, I wrote the first note on DevOps back in October of 2010, and I felt like after I announced that, I should have been wearing a Kevlar body armor because it was rather upsetting in a world that was supporting things like ITIL at the time. So this kind of provides a context when we talk about cloud native, what do we mean by that? So to continue the discussion then, containers have really, we think, redefined deployment. So what do we mean by that? Well, if you think about, traditionally what you may be doing today, right, for those of you not doing containers, right, is that you have a deploy process, and then you have an update or a patch process sometime after production deployment. Right? But in a containerized world, that's not really necessary. In fact, that's highly discouraged. Right? The only patching that occurs in a containerized world is that to the kind of golden image prior to it being deployed. Right? So containers represent what is called immutable infrastructure. Right? So basically, it doesn't change. If you need to patch it, you basically kill it. You go ahead, go back to the source, you obviously patch that, then you deploy it as an image again, right? So you're not actually going out in a production world. So the reason why, again, that we think that's important is that, well, who's making those changes now? Well, it's the development teams. It's not necessarily the operations teams. So we think that because of containers, developers will have a greater say on deployment activities. And we'll talk some more about that in just a second. So what about processes? So how many of you are doing continuous integration? Raise your hand. Okay, how many of you are doing continuous delivery? Raise your hand. How many of you are doing continuous deployment? Raise your hand. Okay, a lot fewer. Okay, so a lot fewer of us have a totally automated process, right? That's really what continuous deployment means at the end of the day. That entire software development lifecycle is highly automated. So if we look at the ultimate kind of goal of many organizations, especially of DevOps and Agile proponents, is to get to a continuous deployment world, right? And again, in that context of continuous deployment, who's making the call, right? There's no stop sign typically in a continuous deployment. Now, I realize in reality, you may have pre-approved changes, right? That you've already sat down with your operations colleagues, or the dev team has sat down with the operations colleagues to pre-approve certain changes. But in many cases in the cloud-native world, that discussion is no longer happening. When you look at some of the cloud unicorns like Facebook and Netflix, right, the organization that's making the call and deployment, although there is a release manager involved at like Facebook, is largely the development team, right? There isn't that stop sign, right? I remember having a discussion years ago with a client, and we were talking about their change advisory board, and they said, yeah, we call it the deployment prevention committee within the organization, right? And it's kind of an unfair characterization because at the end of the day, you had two parts of the organization being measured in different ways. And if you're responsible for SLAs, right, change is the enemy of high availability and resiliency in many cases. So it existed for a reason. But now in an agile world, it may not be as necessary. And hence, again, we think there's a case for development owning more and more of that role. And then finally, microservices have revolutionized development. I mean, clearly, when you look at the fact that now we can do parallel programming since we've broken up what was formerly a monolithic piece of code. But as we've done that, well, what did we accidentally, or maybe purposefully, I'm not sure, but what did we accidentally introduce? We accidentally introduced complexity, right? And Gary Olaf, who is a Gartner analyst, I think said it best. He said what microservices do is they move complexity from the inside to the outside, right? It's no longer having to monitor and understand thousands of lines of code in one single executable. Is having to potentially monitor thousands of microservices that form a complete end-to-end service. Now, who's going to know that service best? Well, likely it's going to be the individuals that help develop it, right? They're going to be more and more involved in its monitoring and management over time. At least that's one of our positions today. So again, microservices have solved a lot of the challenges in development, right? Being able to get code more rapidly in production. But from a monitoring standpoint, it does create more complexity, and we think, again, the team that may be best suited for that might be the development and the pre-production teams to provide that capability. So what's often missing, though, in a discussion on cloud native is a discussion on people, right? And in fact, I think sometimes I have the wrong academic background. I really should be a psychiatrist because most of the problems I found with like DevOps and Agile involve people. It's not necessarily a technology and a process problem. But having said that, there are changes afoot as well in the cloud data world in terms of people, right? We see new roles, things like site reliability engineers. We see new organizational constructs, like the famous or infamous Amazon 2 pizza teams. And we certainly see a change of culture, right? From one where there's strict control to one that is more kind of ownership oriented, right? So that the individuals that are involved in the cloud native activities of their firms no longer view themselves as individual silos, but each part of the organization has a part ownership in that outcome, not in their own individual metrics, as an example. So for all the reasons that we've just described, we think that developers will need to take on a more operational influence. Again, we think that the issues related to containers where, again, they're not being changed necessarily in production, the fact that processes now are being automated end to end, and who's going to make that call ultimately about whether or not to push the deploy button, as well as increasing complexity of what we're deploying, is going to require more and more of the developer input and insight. Now, I want to be clear, as I've indicated, in that operations also needs to evolve, right? Again, I'm not a believer, although I don't know if you all remember that big Twitter war several years ago about NoOps versus DevOps, right? Agent Cockcroft of Netflix, now of Amazon, was a kind of proponent of NoOps. But I think that operations will need to up its game to continue to provide high levels of support. And one of the ways they're going to do that is to go from just being purely admins, storage admins, server admins, network admins, to more of this what we call platform engineer or site reliability engineer role. Has anyone read the Google site reliability engineering book? A few of you, right? We all can't be like Google, of course, but it's a good overview of how they've kind of restructured their organization and what the roles and responsibilities are for people that have presumably the kind of operations coverage area. And so what we believe operations are going to do is provide more of that platform engineering. What does that mean? It means helping build out the automation platform. What does that mean? Helping build out that monitoring platform. It doesn't necessarily mean, though, that the consumers, that they will be the consumers, of that monitoring data. We believe, again, more and more of that will be in the development side of the house. So we've given you a little bit of a premise about how we see the environment influencing the role of development. I'd like to bring up my colleague Deb to come up and see if we can chat a little bit about how this is going to impact more cloud data monitoring with things like Wavefront. Deb.
Thank you. So I'm Deb Nog from Wavefront. So almost all of our customers are actually cloud native, Lyft, Box, Workday, Okta, Yammer. So we come from this world. I want to bring back some of the behaviors that we've seen in the cloud native world. One of the biggest changes that we see in monitoring cloud native applications is that the biggest obstacle is getting people on the same page. And they can't do that if they have completely different systems. You have a Tower of Babel problem, right? People are speaking different languages about their own system. So the database guy says, my logs indicate the database is fine, it's your application. The app guys look at APM and say, hey, actually, it's the database that's causing the problems here, right? And no one agrees. So one thing we have to do is move towards a shared model. Shared data and a shared model on top of that data. It also implies that you need a platform easy enough and accessible enough so everyone can essentially get onto it by themselves without a lot of hand-holding. So what we do is metrics. So there's logs, obviously. We've used those forever. There's tracing topology, there's configuration data, and there's metrics, right? Numerical measurements of any kind of attribute of a system. Metrics are uniquely positioned for this universal data format because they actually can touch every single component or abstractions of components. They're also intuitive enough because they're visual and they're real time, like a video game, that you can pick them up very easily. And so we see massive adoption across our customer base. At Workday, we have more than 1,300 active Wavefront users. At Intuit, more than 2,000. That's not just accounts, that's actual active users. And And that's mostly developers. It's not ops people who are using it. Ops people are a part of this, obviously, but the vast majority of our users are developers. Now, metrics are not the single pane of glass. You hear this term a lot, at least you used to. A single pane of glass across your whole system. It doesn't exist. It never will exist, because no one data type actually can own the whole world. But we are the first pane of glass for most of our customers. If you walk in a Box or Yammer or Workday or Lyft, and you look on the walls, you'll see metrics. You'll see Wavefront up on the walls. That's how they look at their system first. Then they drill down using logs or tracing to understand problems in more detail. Because each of these data types actually has different trade-offs, right? Metrics are super fast and very universal, but they throw away information, right? Logs keep all that information, but they're slow. You can't search all of your logs fast enough in many cases. Tracing request flows, right? APM type tracing keeps all the topology between components, right? But can't see the universe inside each component. And metrics are actually used across the entire operational lifecycle. So you detect a problem, you diagnose the problem, you remediate the problem, you validate the remediation, and you prevent it for next time. Metrics are actually used across the entire lifecycle, along with help from logging and tracing to dig down and see what the problem is. One of the major things we see with our cloud-native companies is that they have very little in common with each other. Every cloud-native company is like a snowflake. They all have their own microservices. They have their own architectures around those microservices. They look very different. I used to be at eBay and Google and other more traditional companies back then. They looked more similar to each other. It was a pretty good transfer of knowledge to go from one company to another back then. But nowadays, you go from Box to Lyft, they're wildly different. They're actually pushing the frontier in completely different ways across the bottlenecks of their business. What that means is that people actually have to create custom flows, custom dashboards, custom models on top of their data, which means they need a powerful query language, which is at the heart of Wavefront. You can't have a stock set of 5 or 10 or even 100 dashboards and expect that to actually solve cloud-native problems. You have to create your own dashboards from scratch, because you're probably the one at the frontier of your industry, right? Box is pushing the frontier in a different way than Lyft is, than Okta is, than Yammer is. There are so many deployment patterns now, too. There's green, blue, rolling, canaries, right? So you might do a canary deployment where you actually deploy to a certain set of users by type. You might do a rolling upgrade by infrastructure. You might do green, blue, where you essentially upgrade the secondary cluster or a back cluster and then switch them around so it becomes the master. And all of these deployments require comparison, right? They require comparing across space or across time. If you're doing an upgrade in place, you want to do it across time, right? You want to see how does it behave compared to how it behaved a day ago or an hour ago or a week ago, and see if it's changed for the better or for the worse. If you're doing a canary deployment, maybe it's across space, right? One set of users against another set of users. Are they using the same amount of CPU or other resources? So again, you need more custom dashboards, more custom workflows here. Now, while the cloud has helped to make some of these bottom layers of your application more abstract, it's actually introduced a whole bunch of new ones too, in the form of open source infrastructure, right? All the stuff in the middle has tons of open source competing for your attention. And they all have to be monitored and managed in different ways. And so what we see is a lot of our customers actually spending a lot of time in the middle, not just the top part, not just the application code, but all the infrastructure that makes up their application, right? All the message queues, the containers, and the data stores, right? They always have multiple ones. And this actually tells you why data silos don't work, because a problem anywhere here could be caused anywhere else, right? If you see a symptom at the top level of your application, it might be caused way down at the bottom, which means you have to see the entire stack all in one place to rule stuff in and rule stuff out. So most of our customers actually instrument all their data, top to bottom, in metrics, and see the whole thing all in one dashboard. Again, and then drill down as they want to. So just to wrap up, cloud native enables and requires huge changes in the development process, the deployment process, and the operational process. It requires a move away from data silos towards a unified, shared data model. And because these are all behavioral changes inside your organization, as opposed to a pure technology change, they're hard. Which means it's never too soon to start the process. Thank you very much. And now, Cameron, you want to come up and we'll answer some questions?
Hey, if you have any questions, we're happy to try to answer them for you. I know we have some time left, so does anyone have any questions?
I can't see even people.
Yeah, it's a little hard to see, so I apologize. Anyone? Okay. Well,
Off the hook?
we're Nick? Oh, you want to repeat the question?
So is this intended to displace other monitoring tools? No. So it's meant to be used in conjunction with them. So again, no one data type can tell the whole story. And so we actually work with APM, we work with logging, we work with a bunch of other monitoring approaches. I think each one has a niche it falls into, and some of them were probably too broadly applied in the past and are kind of finding the right niche for them now.
Anything else? Well, we're going to be here for a few minutes after this session here, so if you want to come up and chat with us with any other questions, happy to do that. So thank you for your time and look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.